I'm sure I would win and go into the Hall of Fame if there was ever a prize for the worst manner to find out about your partner's extramarital affair. I unexpectedly found myself a member of a club that no one ever wants to be a part of, just like so many other people in this sub. I will never forget the sound of my ex-sister-in-law's voice as I drove home from a week-long business trip, and she kept saying, I'm sorry, over and over on the phone. She only told me that my wife was in the hospital and that I needed to go home right away after I had managed to calm her down a little. I was bewildered and had no understanding what she meant. My brain went into overdrive as I started to speed to get there faster and simultaneously try to gather more information without crashing. She merely claimed it was an attack before hanging up the phone and refusing to respond when I tried to reach her again. To give you some context, my ex and I first met in our mid-20s. At a barbecue, it was through a common friend. She appeared almost too good to be true at first. She was shy and reserved, in addition to her extraordinary beauty. We took a while to start dating formally, but when we did, I was ecstatic. She started crying right away when we tried to get close. This should have been a warning to me. She apologized the following day, telling me she was triggered, but I freaked out and assumed I was to blame. It turns out that she was in a long-term relationship with a man who was emotionally, physically, and mentally abusive 2 years prior to us meeting. When they were alone together, he would make fun of her and then say he was sorry. She told me that it had nothing to do with me despite experiencing a flashback. We proceeded cautiously because she was still receiving therapy. It was difficult, but I knew that if we got beyond it, our relationship would only get stronger because I loved her. And it really did seem that way for a while. After a further year, we had become engaged. Intimacy for the first time also occurred at this phase. Because of an inheritance from my late uncle, I had the good fortune to be able to purchase a house for us. Everything was going well, so I suggested, half-jokingly, I might add, that we plant a peach tree to symbolize fresh starts. She was all for it. Not long afterwards, we got married, and to be honest, it was fantastic. We experienced the typical highs and lows that come with marriage, of course, but I felt that we were luckier since she always insisted on never having an argument before bed, and she would always gently point it out to me if I did something to annoy her. Life kind of transpired after that, and I got promoted at work. I would have to travel more for business meetings and conferences at work, but the income increase was offset by this. She seemed to be becoming less intimate and getting down much more than previously, I noted. She would even stop tactfully addressing things that hurt her and keep her phone close to her. She told me she was okay and that this was just a phase she was going through when I tried to talk to her about it. I decided to let it go because I had no reason to doubt her. She would occasionally spend the night at her sister's house and tell me that she simply needed some alone time with her sister. She was supposed to be spending time with her sister on the day I received that terrible call. Once more, I recall hastily running to the hospital, gasping for air, and furiously inquiring about my wife. The world's most patient and compassionate policeman told me he was my sister-in-law's acquaintance and had responded to a report about a domestic disturbance when he sat me down to explain what had transpired. When he got there, he saw a couple fighting, the woman was yelling and trying to scratch the guy who was supposedly her lover. I couldn't understand this since, first of all, it had nothing to do with my wife, we are married, and, second of all, practically anyone who knows my wife knows that she wouldn't do it. With a knowing expression on his face, he put his hand on my shoulder and encouraged me to keep my cool since, well, that girlfriend of mine was actually my wife. I would have laughed in his face if the situation hadn't been so serious, but there was something about the way he explained things that made me trust him. A nurse then led me in to see my wife, and I still struggled to find the right words to express what I saw. For what seemed like an age, I just stood there. Then a doctor walked in and told me about her injuries. She had 3 broken ribs, enormous bruises covering half of her face, a partially swollen left eye, and a slightly cracked jaw. Subsequently, the physician revealed to me that she was expecting a child. I was still baffled as to how this had occurred. Then her sister appeared to me. She attempted to evade me at first, but then gave in to pressure from her friend who was a police officer and told me all she knew. My wife's former partner had communicated with her 5 months prior, as it transpired. In order to atone for his transgressions and clear his karma, he was following the redemption pyramid step. Is your BS meter currently flying off the charts? After they had additional conversations, he persuaded her to meet for coffee so he could prove to her that he had changed. Obviously, the fact that he looked different and that old feelings came back did not help. It became an emotional affair very quickly. After asking her sister for guidance, my wife decided to take things slowly and just get it out of her system if necessary. 3 months later, this escalated to a physical affair. She even volunteered to occasionally fill in for my wife, telling her that she should at least try to mend her differences with her ex, in whatever way possible. At this moment, my sister-in-law broke down in tears and apologized repeatedly to me, stating that my wife had only told her therapist and me about the abuse at the time and that she was unaware of it. I had no feeling. My wife's actions left me completely bewildered and without any emotion. I was there when my wife eventually woke up, and she started crying. I flew like a zombie for the next few months. At the behest of her family, we underwent marriage counseling in addition to individual counseling for her. She was shockingly honest in counseling about how everything had transpired and how much she regretted herself for hurting me. She told me that she used to fantasize about driving into the river on her way home from his apartment because she thought I smelled like him and didn't want his perfume to contaminate me. That made sense, though. It wasn't until she found out she was pregnant that she truly woke up and saw that any more contact with this man was toxic for both her and the unborn kid. She claimed she tried to end it but was too weak. She decided to put an end to things in person as a result. She turned into a shell of her former self and acquired a fear of all men save me after he lost his cool. There was a time when she couldn't even go to the restroom at night without my hand holding hers. Depressing. We got a paternity test done just after the baby was delivered, and sure enough, he was my. But the more I was with her, the more I realized that I genuinely detested my wife, not hated her. Every time I looked at the lady I married, all I could see was his leftovers. I made the decision to go because I was worried that I would regret what I did and end up just like her abusive ex. She pleaded with me to stay, and if I wanted to, she even absurdly offered to give me a hall pass and give me a smack. I had to leave at this point, I realized. In actuality, she was incredibly giving during the separation. She signed a very thoughtful co-parenting plan that the courts had produced and returned to live with her parents. 3 years later, I happened to see my current fiancée. While talking about Egyptian mythology with a friend in a bookshop, this stunning woman came up to correct me on how I was pronouncing the Egyptian gods and towns. Naturally, we exchanged numbers and finally started dating after I was so pleased by her comprehension and the fact that she is Egyptian. It was really in front of the peach tree I had planted years earlier that I asked her to marry me. I got down on one knee, but she dashed into the house and emerged with a ring too before I could get an answer. It turns out that because she was so deeply in love with me and didn't want any other lady to have me, she was actually going to pop the question herself. Being present when it happened, my son told his mother what had transpired in all of his precious innocent childhood. That night, my ex physically appeared in the rain and started screaming at me, telling me that this wasn't the end of us and that I should propose to my fiancée in front of our tree. Right now, I'm at my absolute breaking point. She is the mother of my child, therefore I can't break up with her, but she is basically bugging my fiancé and me. How do I encourage her to stop being afraid of guys, move on, and not make me file a restraining order? I apologize for the length, but I'm in serious need. Edit wanted to pose a question to the wise women of Reddit. The idea that she even found time for her ex, who enjoyed ruining her, only for her to meet a far worse end, really bothers me to this day. Is it typical for the victim of abuse to need the abuser's attention even if she may despise him? Something I once heard my ex say. Edit 2. I should have mentioned this in the original post when my fiancée gave me the ring she intended to use to pop the question. It had the words to my pharaoh damn I love this woman engraved on the inside band. Before we update, let's read over the comments. my spouse recently experienced something similar, albeit less dramatic than yours. His ex was really wild. For a while after they broke up, he continuously crossed boundaries and couldn't accept he was with me. I'm really sorry that happened to you, by the way. He now advised talking to her exclusively about matters pertaining to the kids. He would simply ignore her if she tried to talk about anything else. Give it a shot. Even while she might not like it at first, if she realizes she's not receiving anything in return, she will soon give up. Another remark suggested that you moved to obtain sole custody, record her behavior as well, and that someone punched that gullible, nasty ex-sister-in-law for interfering and being the main cause of this issue. Another suggested that you and the other party negotiate a mutual go-between for co-parenting purposes under threat of a restraining order. The update is as follows. Whoa, I never expected this kind of response. I sincerely appreciate all of your good thoughts and support for my fiancée, myself, and my former partner. It's unfortunate that my scenario with my ex and her history of abuse is more widespread than I had imagined. While it is encouraging to know that some people have recovered from them, reading about some of your comparable cases almost makes one give up. What's happened since my first post is as follows. I want to start by expressing my gratitude to user Mama2045 for her excellent suggestion, which is so basic. Saved us a great deal of hassle. Let me now share what has transpired since my last post. My kid informed us that he wants to have a camp night for his next birthday. I should clarify that the boy adores being outside. He enjoys playing in rivers, hiking, and camping the most. Of course, we are unable to visit our regular locations because of the current circumstances. I thus offered my backyard in exchange. He also asked for my ex to spend the night with him. He wanted to recreate a scene from one of his kid adventure shows, the one where the youngster is roasting marshmallows on the campfire with both parents seated on either side of him. I couldn't have my ex sleep in the same tent as my son and myself, even though I had no intention of refusing my son's birthday wishes. She said she understood, but that would be far too disrespectful to my fiancé. She was obviously not comfortable with it. Apparently taking advantage of this, my ex would not stop talking about how excited she was to spend the night with her two men. She even went so far as to purchase an impressive amount of camping gear, rivaling that of Bear Grylls. She wasn't gracious about it either, and it was clear that she was trying to put pressure on my fiancé. She needed to stop a few times, and I had to threaten to invite her sister before she finally gave in. My ex-wife has harbored a deep animosity towards her sister ever since our divorce. My ex-wife accepts that she played a part in our marriage's breakdown, but she holds her sister accountable for supporting the affair and failing to protect her from making decisions that would have destroyed not only her own life but, more significantly, our life together. It's come to the point where she won't let her sister to see our son for any length of time, which almost put my ex-sister-in-law through a deep depression. For years, my ex-sister-in-law has been attempting to make amends with her sister, but things only seem to become worse with time. Mama2045, a Redditor, gave me a quick and practical fix. She advised me to go buy a multi-room tent so that my fiancé could join us. I wasted no time in going outside to get one. My former partner wasn't really pleased with that, of course, but he was relieved to be in the same house as me on my birthday. My son felt ecstatic. He claimed to be a great explorer finding a new land as he rushed around the yard. As night fell, my former partner and I built the bonfire and supplied the marshmallows. With great excitement, he sat in between us and began toasting his marshmallow next to us. What surprised me was what happened after we finished roasting marshmallows and snapping photos. In order to prepare his second s'more, he sat next to my fiancée and gave her a stick and a marshmallow. Really, it's amazing how something so flawless and pure could emerge from the complete disaster that was my relationship with my former partner. I gave my ex some of my time when she asked. She apologized for her behavior on the day I proposed, but not for what she did after we entered the kitchen. She informed me that the idea of me committing my heart to someone else scared her as she still thought of me as her husband. She stated she would give anything to go back in time and fix her mistakes since she never wanted to hurt me. She talked about how thrilled she was to learn that I was the father from the paternity test because she saw it as a fresh start for us and that he was evidence of our love. I told her I was pleased with where I was in life and who I was with, but I hoped she would find someone to make her happy too. I thanked her for having the guts to share all of this with me. She assured me that she would wait for me and that she meant what she said the day we were divorced. I was trying to talk to her, but I couldn't get through, so I gave up and left the kitchen. We made the decision to call it a night, with my fiancée and I sleeping in one tent room and my ex-husband and son in another. Overall, I had a bad night, but my son had a fantastic birthday. That's all for now, and I'll keep you updated if anything significant occurs. Let's go on to the comments. Here's a tip: you should never, ever be by yourself with your ex. Make sure your fiancé, family, or an adult friend is present throughout all encounters you have with her. She believes that you are her property and would stop at nothing to destroy your bond and win you back after what she said to you in the kitchen. To protect my own ass, I would videotape every interaction I had with her. Choosing your own path and living a fantastic life is advised, as having a child with her entails years of dealing with her. User retorted, I've already warned him he is not to spend any time around her, or I will take that as he doesn't value our relationship or me. She realized how badly she effed up 5 years ago trying to hit him up with the whole "we should be together because of our daughter." I also have to deal with my boyfriend's ex trying to ruin our relationship. People who cheat and then play the victim are very repulsive. The similar comment was made by another person. My fiancé and his ex have been divorced since 2015. Every few months, she still gets in touch to let him know how much she is missing him and to see how things are doing with us. Because he had raised her 2 boys from a previous relationship and cared about their well-being, he hadn't blocked her before, but he felt compelled to do so after she persisted in fabricating ever more ludicrous lies in an attempt to win his trust. All I want to do is slap her. The person you love is not someone you want to lose. Don't leave him for someone else after continuously cheating on him while he's at work. OP retorted, I believe I will implement this recommendation. I neglected to mention that she still wears her previous wedding and engagement rings. Whether she's at her parents' house or out running errands, she frequently wears them. I informed her that seeing them makes me think of the suffering I've experienced in the past, so she doesn't wear them when I visit. That concludes our talk for today.